Ridley Scott's Blade Runner from 1982 is first and foremost a film about vision. The film features two primary ways of seeing: the Gnostic way of seeing and the mechanical way of seeing. The Gnostic way of seeing is a way of seeing in which the viewer tries to connect intimately with the viewed. The Gnostic seer is hungry for experience, hungry for immediate, intimate connection with what he or she is looking at. The word Gnostic comes from the word gnosis, which means knowledge. Not knowledge as scientists seek after knowledge, such as a knowledge of amoebas, but rather knowledge as, again, intimacy, like you know your husband, your wife, your lover, your best friend. In contrast, mechanical seeing occurs when the viewer looks at an object with a desire to control that object, where the viewer sees himself as a subject and sees what he is looking at as an object to know, label, categorize, and control. So in this regard, mechanical seeing is, even though it might appear to be scientific, narcissistic, because the viewer is really simply seeing the concepts in his own mind. In this regard, mechanical seeing, as I'm defining it, is akin to William Blake's ratio, which we saw in There Is No Natural Religion. Ratio is Blake's word for the lowest common denominator of perception, where you reduce the perceived object to the general concepts agreed upon by the culture in which you are living. So in this regard, you do not see the object at all, but again, you see the ideas that are in your head that have come from your own personal experience and have also come from the culture in which you live. The opening scene of Blade Runner shows a disembodied eye, a huge eye shot close up, seemingly hovering over the city of Los Angeles, 2019 Los Angeles. The eye is at the same position as the huge temple-like structures owned by Tyrell. What does this eye tell us? Note, if you look at the image that is now before you, that the eye is obviously, as all eyes are, a window. We actually are put inside the head of the owner of this eye, and we get a point of view shot of the city. So we see what this person sees. We see through the window of his eye. But this image also makes clear that an eye is a mirror. It reflects what it sees. So in this regard, the fire billowing out from the temple top, though it is distant from this eye in terms of scientific measure, is also one with this eye. It blends with the eye. It is reflected in the eye. So in this regard, we have a powerful symbol of what I'm calling Gnostic seeing, where the eye of the beholder is a vehicle through which one can see what is beyond, but also a means by which the viewer can connect with, merge with, become one with what is beyond, reflecting the image of what is beyond. Throughout the film, the character that is most likely to approach this way of seeing is Roy Batty. Throughout the film, other characters are more likely to see the world mechanically. Here we have an image from the Voight-Kampff test that Deckard gives Rachel early in the film. We saw an even earlier version of the Voight-Kampff with Holden giving one to one of the escaped replicants. So, look at this. In this regard, the eye of Deckard reduces the eye of Rachel to a flat image on a screen. And he is simply studying the eye as he would study some kind of scientific specimen. There's no desire to relate, there's no desire to merge, there's no desire for immediate idiosyncratic experience. There's only a desire to measure, to categorize, and to control. Deckard, throughout the film, practices this kind of seeing, though by the end of the film, his way of seeing transforms, I should say, from the mechanical more to the Gnostic, until by the time we get to the end of the film, we see his merging his way of seeing with Roy Batty's way of seeing. Here is the famous scene where Roy and Leon go to visit Chew, the eye maker for Tyrell Corporation. And Roy emphasizes what he has seen through these artificial eyes. Even though they are artificial, they have seen great life. As he says to Chew, if only you can see what I've seen through your eyes. In other words, I've had intense experiences in which what I have beheld has moved me deeply. This suggests a kind of Gnostic seeing. Tyrell, the maker of the replicants, ironically enough, wears very thick bifocals, suggesting that he cannot see at all, even though he produces the sight of all of these artificial beings. And when Roy Batty gouges his eyes out in the famous confrontation between the two characters, this of course recalls King Lear, we see again the irony of the great scientist, visionary, when he comes face to face with those he has created, has no sight at all. He's in fact quite ignorant, believing that Roy will not harm him, having the arrogance to assume that his mechanical son will not rebel against him and slay him. So this highlights the limitations of what I'm calling mechanical sight. It lacks sensitivity and therefore is in some cases akin to blindness. This is near the end of the film when Roy is about to die, and he delivers one of the more famous speeches in the film, if not one of the more famous speeches in all of sci-fi history, sci-fi film history. You people wouldn't believe what I've seen. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I've seen sea beams glitter in the dark near Tannhauser Gate. All these memories lost like tears in rain. Time to die. I think I botched a little bit of that quote in the middle there, sorry. But again, here's Roy as the Gnostic visionary. Even though Roy himself, of course, has blind spots, he is violent, he is manipulative, he is far from an ideal hero, but yet given the reductive seeing of most characters in the film, the police chief, for instance, who ultimately sees people as tools, Roy Deckard early on, for instance, who simply analyzes replicants in hopes of gaining scientific information. In contrast to that, we have Roy, intense, poetic, lyrical, dying to experience as much life as he can, to see as much as he can see. So what we have in the film, at the very beginning, we have this kind of ideal of sight with the disembodied eye, I'm calling it. We don't know whose it is. And the characters in the film can be measured by that ideal of sight. And sometimes Roy approaches it most closely. And by the end of the film, it seems that Deckard is approaching that way of seeing himself.